Welcome, Tarnished. It's been about a month since my last video. Even though it was a small 30-second meme clip, I still have yet to beat the DLC. Kinda slow, that's on me. Though I am having a blast with things though. I keep getting distracted by so many build ideas along the way. Every new weapon, spell, Astral, I just want to try them all, and well, it's really distracting me from actually beating the game, so. But this one was a long time in the making for sure. Lady Maria of the Astral Clocktower. My stats are 60 Vigor, 19 Mind, 20 Endurance, 12 Strength, 50 Dexterity, 16 Faith, and 45 Arcane. I started as the Prophet for this one, as well as stopping at rune level 150. I tried this build out as Occult first and foremost because I wanted a more arcane focused build. But as time went on, I got my hands on some thematic arcane incantations. I come to realize that I like the sort of blood slinging hybrid. Well, that and the fact that Milady completely stripped the original build of using 2 straight swords. We know Lady Maria's primary weapon is a bit longer and has a unique finesse to the moveset, so whenever I saw Milady, I just had to reconstruct a build to fit. That's how I got a Dex Arcane build that focuses on bleed and leeching health back from enemies in the world. One quick thing I will mention, I messed around a bit with Milania's Great Rune, but honestly it's awful. As we all know, it's actually awful. Sure, it gives you that healing, but most of the time you're better off just going with Morgoth's Great Rune instead if you really want to use Great Rune. I know, another bleed build. Didn't you already do that, Vulcan? Yeah, I mean, but come on, how can I have a Bloodborne character and not use blood when her thing is literally blood? I tried some fire, but I instead just settled for bloodflame incantations to mimic some of her splash attacks when it comes from the blade slices in her second phase. Let's get down to the fashion first and foremost before I go too deep into this whole thing. As usual, we got 2 outfits. One is more like her coat, and the other that lacks it. I like the Confessor chest piece the best with this look. Now, the third thing you all want to see is why Milady. I can see here that most of you at least stick it out to the end of the main meat of the videos I make. Seriously, I appreciate all of you. Even if it's your first time visiting the channel, just don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. It really does help me with putting these things out here for you guys. Yeah, anyways, this thing here. This beautiful work of art. The best thing Miyazaki has added since the Light Greatsword. Y'all think I'm exaggerating, but seriously, that's how I feel about this unique Light Greatsword. Not only is it the only one of its kind we have, since the others are boss weapons, it's early on to get as well as it has a really banger moveset. Even the one-handed movement is unique enough that taking it and using it as a one-handed weapon is viable. The reason I picked up Milady is the finesse it has, so whenever you're moving around in combat. If there is one thing that Shadow of the Erdtree did perfectly was the new movesets on the weapons that were added. They all are unique in their own ways, they really stand out while not really stepping too hard on the classic weapons. Some of them at least. The Astral I picked for this perfect sword is the only unique one of its kind, Winged Stance. Winged Stance gives you a fancy forward slash that really does fall in line with Lady Maria's agile combat style, and with the R2 of this weapon you launch yourself into the air and down upon the enemies with high poise damage, as well as thrusting damage, which can lead to nearly a full combo from the R1, R1, R2 in most cases in PvE. Oh, did I mention the bleed proc it has on the combo too? Juicy. Outside the Wing Stance for flavor, I throw on the bloodhound step if I needed extra dodge in combat because rolling is overrated and I refuse not to look cool while having this build up and running. Though my skill issues still, well, anyways. Milady with this build has a solid AR of 492 and a blood loss of 108, making it a dangerous choice. Did I also mention that this baby got buffed in the most recent patch? Oh yeah. My offhand weapon isn't so important, but I do use it to stagger enemies while I'm doing my usual thing of flying around with Milady. The Warhawk's Talon is a straight sword that I'd infuse with bleed. Offhand swords aren't really too bad whenever you aren't power stancing. It comes out faster than your R1 with Milady and staggers most of the foes in the world, as well as allowing you to get in some damage between rolls on the boss if you need to be quick. While it isn't as ideal as having another offhand that we could power stance with, this was the best alternative I could find. It does have an AR of 434 and a blood loss of 108 as well, so it isn't a bad choice as a secondary offhand. We also have the Dragon Communion Seal, which is self-explanatory for our arcane spells. It has an incant scaling of 282. Lastly, in our backup, we have the Eleonora's Poleblade, and it deserves to be here. Lady Maria's weapons have 2 modes. We know that she has a 2-handed twin blade mode and a part where she breaks them into 2 weapons. This weapon having bloodflame innately is a good thing considering we have a heavy investment into arcane. The bleed damage procs quite often and quickly on the Astral Bloodblade Dance, as well as the running light attack. After all, the buffs to twin blades have gotten over the months, it's a nice time to pick these up now for sure. With a bleed build up of 76 and an AR of 535. It's not the strongest weapon, but it's flashy. And you can do this neat little trick of unlocking after you launch yourself with the Astral, turn around and go backwards. It's kind of fun. Maybe not the most useful thing, but it's still kind of fun. I understand that I'm missing a crossbow here, but I decided to go with spells instead of a crossbow to, mimic the gun. Crossbows in this game are very niche, and while I'm sure you can do a pure dex build with a crossbow, I don't even think it's worth using whatsoever. The spells I'm using are flavor, but I'm going with bloodflame, talons, and bloodboon. While these two are just backup spells, it's pretty clear that playing the mage blade hybrid is sort of how Elden Ring wants you to go about building a build anyhow, so I chose these. Bloodflame and talons are pretty good if you can get around the side of a boss, or draw enemies in for a delayed attack, which I've done for wake-ups, or if I need to run around a corner. It does pretty alright damage, then again this build is mostly melee. Bloodboon is our second spell, and has a really nice AoE control for our kit. It may not do the highest damage, but it does build up bleed on target, and against bigger targets, it's pretty nice. It's a mid-range poke of sorts if you're doing a hit-and-run fight. It's really good if you're getting overwhelmed and you can pull it out for the fight. Keep in mind that Bloodflame Talon inflicts bleed buildup of 50, while Bloodboon has a bleed buildup of 30, but leaves pools of blood that will damage anything that moves through that, making it pretty effective against crawler enemies. Damn annoying little things. Lastly, I have Beast of Vitality as a support for a long-term heal over time. Since we can't exactly get the best leech in the game, save for our talismans and a really bad Great Rune, this should help you in those longer segments in a DLC for sure. It did me. The talismans I use are a mix. I'm going to go through each of them in a while. Shard of Alexander, very obvious, but it really kicks our wing stance into overdrive with damage. A 20% increase is quite the feat when it comes to killing normal enemies. Against bosses though, it's a bit hard to get off a full combo, but the heavy attack on the Ash of War is still worth using. It's where most of your damage comes from anyhow with a heavy guard break. Taker's Cameo. We need that health regen since we don't exactly have Bloodborne mechanics of rally, right? I think that's what it's called. Anyway, this restores 3% of your HP upon defeating enemies, with an added bonus of 30 HP per kill as well, so 3% plus 30. Now I am no math man, but I can tell you that it does work, and if we tie that up with our next talisman, it starts to all come together in the exploration survival aspect. But if I had to swap this out during a boss fight, I'd use the Crimson Sea Talisman plus 1, which basically increases our HP restoration by our Flask by 30%. Godskin Swaddling Claw. There is a lot of nerd math on the wiki page for this, but essentially it heals similarly to Taker's Cameo with a 3% plus a flat 30 HP. It just helps a lot in the open world and allows you to be aggressive towards most non-boss enemies. If you're feeling a bit on edge with this one during a boss fight, I'd just swap it out for a defensive talisman like the Crimson Amber Medallion plus 3, or the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, which reduces physical damage by 20%. I do suggest if you want more damage though, since you're using a bleed build, to pick up and use Lord of Blood's Exaltation. I think I pronounced that right. Since you're using bleed incantations and weapons, every bleed proc will increase the damage by 20% for 20 seconds, which is pretty solid. Lastly, we have Millicent's Prosthesis. This one right here stacks with the attack power boost on the Lord of Blood's Talisman, giving us a plus 5 dex boost and raises our attack power by 4, 6, and 11% on attacks. Nothing really needs to be said more here, but this talisman puts us at 55 dexterity, which does increase our AR a bit more. And, as I mentioned, it does stack with the damage increase from the Lord of Blood's Talisman, which in total really does give us some multiplicative damage stacks. For consumables, this is something I've been slowly getting used to doing since the DLC drop, which has helped me quite significantly whenever I'm getting a bit overwhelmed in situations. Some of these require crafting material for me, but they're honestly worth getting. Boiled crab or prawn. Crab increases our physical defense by 20%, while prawn is 15%, and it stacks with the Dragon Crest Talisman that I mentioned earlier that would give us a 40 or a 35% physical damage negation. Pretty strong. These can be bought from our favorite prawn man, but if you give the Twin Maiden his bell, you can buy it there. Uplifting Aromatic. This gives us sort of a bubble if we need it on the fly. And also buffs our allies too. It's a 90% damage barrier that breaks on hit and lasts 40 seconds. You can use this in a pinch if you aren't going to dodge the attack in time and want to bite it. From my experience, the item activates a second after pressing the button, so you don't even need to do full animation if you decide to take a hit. This doesn't stack with crab or prawn though, so be wary of that. Of course, use whatever you want to survive, but these at least I feel fit into the theme of it, I suppose. If I had to close this out about this build, I'd say Lady Maria had to be the most fun I've ever had with a melee bleed / spellslinger hybrid. I've tried some other things, and I just wanted to really settle on this type of playstyle, and bring her to life with an Elden Ring is something that I tried to do in the previous Souls games, but with the tools we have in this game, and the freedom of builds and weapon choices we have, it really did come together in the end. Just remember, you don't have to be hard stuck on a theme for a specific build. If you want to use other consumables or items or even other talismans, please do so. The buffs that they give and the defenses that they give are well worth it in the end, if you still want to stick with that whole Lady Maria aesthetic with the Milady and the Warhawk's Talon and Eleonora's Poleblade. Usually, this is where I'd say thank you and enjoy the PvP. But I'm going to be honest with you, PvP on PC Elden Ring is just not it. It's gotten worse since the DLC has dropped, and between getting boss wall invasions and ganks, it's really just full of the same shit you'd see before. I'm really saving myself the frustration here while doing this PvE oriented video. I will still make more PvP builds in the future, just less thematic based on games and other characters, and more thematic based on Elden Ring. Now, I want to preface this and say I did PvP with this build, and it does work pretty okay. But I didn't get any real good footage outside me insta-giving people in a combo with bleed, or, well, getting absolutely demolished. Personally, I don't want to add that here as I feel like it really wasn't fun to do so and I couldn't really make anything fun out of it. Again, seriously, thank you guys. We are moving. Almost 2K. I mean, really, I usually have a bunch of words written here that I kind of have on a script, and I don't want to sound like I'm reading this part off, and I really try my best to make it not sound like I'm reading this part off. But seriously, I love doing this kind of stuff. You all are awesome. I will say it one more time, really grateful of all you guys. So thank you. The next video will be another build here, and I'm actually working on a Final Fantasy XIV video as soon as I can figure that out. But yeah, my next video will be less thematic from another game and revisiting an older build perhaps. I've been really enjoying the Great Katana. Have a wonderful rest of your week, Tarnished, and don't you dare go hollow.